Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Israeli troops attack Palestinians supporting prison hunger strike. UN Security Council finally takes up Yemen issue as crisis worsens. And Egypt Copts blame infiltrators for deadly Maspero clashes. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
Clashes erupted in the Syrian city of Homs between members of the Syrian army and protesters. Explosions were heard and columns of smoke were seen rising from several buildings.
The
BBC could not confirm the veracity of these images that are claimed to be of the Syrian army's campaign to restore security and public order to Homs city in Syria. It has been reported that a number of army members escaped the military and went to Homs. Syrian human rights sources said 3 people were killed by the gunfire of security forces in Homs, indicating that a broad arrest campaign has been ongoing since yesterday. So far, over 100 people have been arrested.
وطالت حتى الآن أكثر من 100 شخص.
Prior to that, protests took place in Daraa in southern Syria. The demonstrators carried pictures of Kurdish dissident Mashal al-Tammo, who was killed last week, and chanted anti-President Bashar al-Assad slogans. Anti-regime demonstrators also took to the streets in Idlib in northwestern Syria under the slogan, "We bow to no one but God." These events coincide with Syria's diplomatic activities that aim to explain the official Syrian position that a conspiracy is threatening the stability of Syria. Syria is relying on the support of several countries, especially Russia and China, which called on the Syrian government to accelerate the implementation of reforms promised by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. A spokesman for the Chinese government indicated that his country's patience is beginning to run out due to the slow process of reforms.
China is highly concerned about the situation in Syria, is against the use of violence, and we hope not to see any more bloodshed and casualties. The Syrian government should move faster to honor its reform pledges and quickly initiate and push forward the inclusive political process with the broad participation of all parties. We believe the Syrian government should respond to people's reasonable expectations and appeals and resolve the issues through dialogue.
In conjunction, reports have emerged on the Syrian government's determination to form a committee to draft a new constitution for the country, present it to parliament, and then put it to a public referendum. Thousands of Syrians escaping the violence in their country chose to come to Lebanon in search of protection for themselves and their families. But they say they do not feel safe and are afraid to return to Syria.
For a long time, the mountainous border that separates Lebanon from Syria was easy to penetrate for smuggling goods or for illegal border crossing into Lebanon. Today, since the Syrian uprising began, the border town of Wadi Khaled has become a refuge for thousands of Syrians escaping the violence and bloodshed at home. However, even though they have crossed the border, many Syrian refugees do not believe they are safe from the Syrian authorities, who have infiltrated Lebanon before. Some of the refugees are staying in schools where a charity foundation secures food and water for them.
We request Lebanon to provide us with protection. We can't leave this area because many people here in Wadi Khaled are affiliated with the Syrian regime. Any one of us could be kidnapped. The regime already kidnapped 2 people and handed them over to the Shabiha. Then the Shabiha handed them over to the Syrian security forces.
I have a boy in the 3rd grade. He is at the top of his class. I would rather have him drop out of school than attend one of the regime schools. They promised to open a school for our children in the area. It's only a promise. School already started a week ago.
UN reports indicate that over 2,700 people have been killed or imprisoned since the uprising in Syria began 6 months ago. After reports indicated the killing in Homs had escalated, the number of refugees rose as well. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees officially registered 4,000 people who fled Syria to Lebanon, while the actual number exceeds 6,000, including Syrians who are being accommodated by Lebanese families.
Currently, there are approximately 3,800 people registered, and they are receiving various aids. As you know, the UN High Commission for Refugee Affairs began working with Syrian refugees in the region of Akkar by request of the Lebanese High Commission for Relief. Right now, we are working with a number of our partners from humanitarian organizations in order to launch programs that will help meet the needs of the refugees.
It is worth mentioning that the number of Syrian border guards has doubled since Syrians began fleeing to Lebanon. The guards open fire at anyone who illegally crosses the border.
Now to Kuwait, which has threatened to replace striking workers if they press ahead with their work stoppages. The Minister of State for Cabinet Affairs said the only solution to the ongoing strikes is to bring in replacement workers from inside or outside of Kuwait. Now, the warning comes amid a wave of strikes and labor unrest in the wealthy Persian Gulf state. The strikes initially began last month by civil servants seeking greater pay and better working conditions. On Monday, thousands of customs officers walked out of their jobs to escalate pressure on the government to meet their demands. Now, the open-ended walkout has frozen all shipping traffic and oil exports and disrupted airport and land border operations.
In other news now, Israeli troops have attacked Palestinians holding a hunger strike outside the Offer prison in the occupied West Bank. The protesters are angry at the conditions under which Palestinians are held at Offer prison and other Israeli detention facilities. They say Israel abuses the inmates.
It is a battle of the Palestinian nation. We should be united against the politics of the occupation. Today it is part of our escalating political reaction to the occupiers who are taking actions against our prisoners, like putting them in solitary confinement.
Offer prison holds hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. NGOs have frequently accused Tel Aviv of human rights abuses in the prison and elsewhere. They say Palestinian children are also held there. Well, Ibrahim Hosseini is our correspondent, joining us now on the line from Jerusalem Al-Quds with all the latest on this latest scuffle taking place. Ibrahim, tell us how the Israeli troops did and why they did attack the protesters who were holding a hunger strike outside the prison.
Yes, Homer. Right now there is a demonstration of about 150 Palestinians who marched from the Red Cross towards Damascus Gate holding candles in solidarity with over 8,000 Palestinian prisoners inside Israeli jails. Sources say that undercover Israeli policemen tried to disrupt the march and intimidated the protesters, the marchers. But sources say that the march is still going on, that the protesters are right now in Damascus Gate chanting for Palestinian prisoners' rights and in solidarity with Palestinian prisoners. Now, we have to remember that since September 27th, Palestinian prisoners inside Israeli jails have been on a hunger strike. This has been going on since September 27th. Some of them are in serious conditions. The main demand of the Palestinian prisoners is to end Israel's solitary confinement policy of some of the prisoners. Sources say that some of the prisoners have been in solitary confinement for over 10 years. Another demand of the prisoners is to allow Palestinians to continue with their education, higher education, while in jail. Also, family visits are rare, especially for those Palestinian prisoners who have relatives in Gaza and are being held in places in Israel. Some of them have not seen or heard from their families in as many as 4 years. So pretty tough conditions for Palestinian prisoners. So far, the Israeli prison service has not responded to the prisoners' demands, though that a lot of them have been on hunger strike for over 2 weeks now.
A military commander was killed and 2 officers were wounded in a bombing caused by explosive devices planted in their cars in Lahej province in southern Yemen. Meanwhile, the Security Council is convening a meeting today to discuss the report from the UN envoy to Yemen, Jamal bin Omar.
Political observers expect the Security Council to issue a resolution to call on President Saleh to step down in accordance with the Gulf Initiative. In this context, protests continue in a number of Yemeni provinces demanding the Security Council recognize the revolution and condemn President Saleh and his regime for the crimes they allegedly committed.
More than 8 months since the beginning of the Revolution of Change, the UN Security Council convened its first session to issue a resolution pertaining to the Yemeni issue. Prior to that, the Council merely issued a statement and a call. The UN envoy to Yemen, Jamal bin Omar, submitted his report to the Security Council after he angrily left the country. The envoy's efforts to resolve the conflicts between the two sides through traditional political methods failed. The revolutionaries and opposition parties demand the full resignation of the regime. European diplomats said their countries are exerting pressure to issue a resolution calling on the Yemeni president to step down in accordance with the Gulf Initiative. They stressed that the resolution will not threaten to impose any sanctions or other measures against the Yemeni regime. However, parallel to the possibility of a UN resolution calling on Saleh to step down, the U.S. ambassador in Sana'a expressed his optimism for an agreement to be reached on implementing the Gulf Initiative for a power transfer in the coming days. Ambassador Gerald Fierstein said the opposition and the regime agreed on most of the initiative, except for certain parts which will be resolved in the coming days. The official spokesman for the Yemeni joint meeting parties, Mohammed Katan, acknowledged in a statement that the political process is delaying the resolution of the Yemeni revolution. Despite this, he affirmed that the opposition is ready to conduct early elections without specifying a schedule, on the condition that the military and financial department be liberated from what he referred to as the hegemony of Saleh's regime. Far from the international meeting on the Gulf Initiative and the dialogues about a means to implement it, Saleh's repressive machine continues targeting protesters here in Taiz. On Monday, security forces attempted once again to storm the Change Square in Sana'a. After it was confirmed that medicine will run out within the next 2 months, economists expressed their fear of an imminent collapse of the local currency, with competition from foreign currencies, especially the US dollar. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, warned of a real food crisis that may storm Yemen. The Yemeni revolutionaries vowed to the UN Security Council and Gulf countries that they would not forget the blood of those who died, be them revolutionaries or not, as a result of what they referred to as the collective punishment policy. As their slogans say, not forgetting means trying those responsible for the bloodshed and achieving the goal for which the deceased sacrificed their lives, a new civil state of Yemen without Saleh's regime.
قدم نائب رئيس الوزراء وزير المالية
Egyptian Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Hazem al-Bablawi submitted his resignation due to the government's handling of the Copts protest 2 days ago. Meanwhile, unknown assailants attacked the funeral procession held for the 17 people killed in the events witnessed in Cairo the day before yesterday, involving stones and empty bottles. Coptic leaders accused infiltrators of last Sunday's demonstrations of turning the marches into acts of violence.
'عنف. 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 'عنf. 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 '
Egyptians held a funeral for those killed in the violent acts in Cairo to put them in their final resting place. However, unknown assailants attacked the funeral procession as it passed through the Gamra area, heading to Tahrir Square on its way to the 6th of October city, where the victims were buried in a mass grave. The atmosphere is charged and the tears are renewed amid puzzling questions about the reasons for the intermittent violence in Egypt. Fingers are being pointed in more than one direction. While one is pointed at the existent sectarian strife, another is pointed at Western politicians who rushed to take advantage of the incidents. In its reaction to the incidents, the White House called on the Egyptians for self-restraint and demanded them to respect the rights of minorities, including the Copts. The European Union condemned the violent incidents and called on the Military Council to protect the religious minorities.
Syria too, we
really do expect that Egypt will move towards elections, motivated by a desire for the participation of all sects and the protection of the people, regardless of their affiliation, roots, and religious beliefs.
In
Egypt, condemnation of the acts of violence was unanimous. Egyptians strongly condemned the manner in which the Military Council handled the protests. In addition, Egyptians exerted extensive mobilization efforts to contain the fallout of the clashes. The Egyptian government immediately formed a panel of inquiry to investigate the incidents. However, the opposition blocs accused the government of being too weak and demanded its resignation. They also called for the formation of a national coalition that includes all political sects in Egypt. Following a meeting presided over by Pope Shenouda III, the Coptic Orthodox Church accused infiltrators among peaceful demonstrators of triggering the violence and of committing crimes while implicating the Copts. The Church's position has affirmed the conspiracy theory cited by Prime Minister Essam Sharaf. Sharaf also accused foreign elements of trying to stir sectarian strife in Egypt, in collaboration with remnants of the former regime in a bid to derail the revolution.
I don't rule out that certain groups, which may have links to the Zionist entity, or the U.S. administration, or their allies in the Gulf, particularly Saudi Arabia, have something to do with what's happening in Egypt.
ويرى مراقبون أن حساسية اللحظة التاريخية التي تمر بها مصر وحجم الاستحقاقات.
Observers believe that the sensitivity of this historic period in Egypt and the magnitude of political transformation require all Egyptians to come together to iron out all troubling issues straining Egyptian society and to eradicate all dormant cells. Egyptians must also work toward achieving a political and national consensus as an urgent response to all the conspiracies led by the U.S. and Israeli entity, which seek to abort the revolution.
The battle for Sirte entered its final phase after the National Transitional Council forces surrounded Gaddafi brigades in two of the city's neighborhoods. In addition, revolutionary forces seized the police headquarters in central Sirte a short while ago. On the Bani Walid front, the revolutionary forces have intentionally ceased operations following the deaths of 17 fighters and the injury of dozens of others in raging battles with Gaddafi brigades entrenched in the city. The fierce resistance displayed by Gaddafi forces has prevented NTC forces from taking control of Bani Walid. Al-Sagher Salam reports.
The Libyan revolutionary flag was raised in central Sirte as NTC fighters enter the last phase of their battle. Battles have been raging for weeks in a bid to seize control of Sirte, which remains a stronghold for Gaddafi loyalists. On this map, the military commander is pointing to a small area near the coast with a 2-square-kilometer radius. The area is being surrounded by revolutionary forces who forced Gaddafi brigades to retreat. The NTC fighters are deploying more troops and supplies in order to end the battle for Sirte in the coming hours.
With God's help, we were able to enter the city of Sirte from all directions. We combed the area and clashed with the enemy in the Wahous neighborhood. Thank God, we were able to surround the enemy in the area of Sha'abiya Mortan.
في الشعبية المسمى بشعبية الموريتان.
في ضواحي المدينة لا تزال بعض الجيوب تأوي عناصر من
The revolutionaries are still facing some pockets of resistance from Gaddafi loyalists.
تارة وبالقذائف تارة أخرى فيما يصفه.
The NTC fighters are using light arms and shells to cleanse the city from snipers and Gaddafi fighters who are not able to flee.
الذين لم يتمكنوا من الفرار.
حسب ما نسمع من The displaced Sirte residents told us that they were placed under siege by the heavy gunfire of Gaddafi's brigades. They said anyone trying to leave the city will be shot at by Gaddafi snipers and brigades, who were using the residents as human shields.
وإذا كان التقدم واضحا على جبهة سرت فإن الجبهة.
While the revolutionaries are making progress on the Sirte front, the Bani Walid front, which is the last stronghold for Gaddafi loyalists southeast of Tripoli, witnessed a notable retreat by NTC fighters who were forced to withdraw from the city's airport. More than 17 fighters were killed and 80 others were wounded in the battles. This prompted the revolutionary forces to suspend their operations in order to reorganize and await the outcome of the battle for Sirte.
The tightening of the noose on Sirte dims the possibility that Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi is hiding in the city. Musa al-Koni, NTC representative for the nomadic Tuareg tribe, said that Gaddafi may be hiding in a remote desert area surrounded by mountains in a bid to elude captivity. Al-Koni added that Gaddafi may be moving in the country's vast southern deserts along the borders of Libya, Algeria, and Niger. He recommended sending choppers to these areas to search for him.
We open with labor unrest. Healthcare officials are warning that the nation's public hospitals are on the verge of collapse following additional resignations of hundreds of medical residents that went into effect today. And to make matters worse, a nationwide labor dispute is looming after Histadrut Labor Federation boss Ofer Aini declared a general labor dispute, which threatens to bring the entire nation to a standstill in 2 weeks' time. IBA's Efrat Batat has the story.
The crisis in the health system continues to deepen. More than 500 medical residents failed to show up for work this morning as more resignations went into effect. The walkouts were felt in leading hospitals across the country. At this hour, only emergency services are being provided and no outpatient care or elective procedures are being performed. For lack of a better choice, medical specialists have temporarily replaced the missing residents, and hospital directors stressed that they will not be able to continue to run their facilities under these conditions. They warned that the entire hospital system could collapse within days if no solution is found quickly. For his part, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today repeated his calls for the residents to act responsibly and return to work. Netanyahu reiterated what he called a most generous proposal, offering those medical residents who are willing to keep working in the public health system a significant salary increase of thousands of shekels a month. The state had asked the National Labor Court to issue a collective injunction to block the residents from resigning, but the court has yet to announce its ruling. And as if the current situation wasn't bad enough, the country is now bracing for more work disruptions that could impact lives. Histadrut Labor Federation Chairman Ofer Aini today announced a general labor dispute over the employment of contractor workers in the private and public sectors. Aini is demanding that the state reduce its use of subcontractors in the workforce and allow for more workers to be hired directly under individual or collective agreements. Speaking at a press conference in Tel Aviv, the labor union chief threatened that if the Treasury does not reach an agreement with the Federation on this matter by the end of the holidays, a general strike of all unionized workers will be launched 2 weeks from today. The work stoppage would include all public offices, companies, local authorities, state-run hospitals, public universities, and airports. The Histadrut chief said he's determined to bring an end to the shameful work conditions of these workers. Aini stressed that this past summer's wave of social protest brought this matter to the fore. There are an estimated 400,000 contractor workers employed by human resource agencies, primarily in the public sector, a situation which Aini described as a form of slave trading. Joining the list of work disruptions, junior faculty members at universities announced today that they too will launch a one-day strike on October 30th, the first day of the new academic school year. This to protest their employment conditions, which they claim resemble those of the subcontractors. For IBA News, this is Efrat Batat.
The Palestinian Authority says it is ready to return to the negotiating table if Israel recognizes the Palestinian right to statehood and agrees to freeze new settlement building in Jerusalem and the West Bank. This according to PA President Mahmoud Abbas, who told a political gathering in Colombia that even as he presses ahead with his UN statehood bid, he's also looking for a political solution to help establish a Palestinian state alongside the State of Israel. Abbas told the South Americans that the Palestinians do not want war, and he will not allow extremists or radicals to plunge the area into another violent conflict. The next port of call for Abbas is Paris, where he's scheduled to meet French President Nicolas Sarkozy to discuss the Palestinian bid in the Security Council. Police Commissioner Yohanan Danino today toured the Galilee village of Tuba Zangaria, where a mosque was torched last week in an apparent price tag attack. Danino stressed the ramifications of the incident are even more far-reaching than the actual act itself. Danino reiterated that he has directed his forces to do everything possible to bring an end to the phenomenon. Meanwhile, the Petah Tikva Magistrates Court today extended the remand of the 18-year-old resident of a Jewish community in Samaria who is suspected of setting the mosque ablaze.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.